Hello YouTube, Dave here again. In today's video I want to talk about the newly released, or yet to be released depending on where you are, Princes of the Apocalypse. This is a D&D campaign for 5th edition using the Temple of Elemental Evil storyline. It's set for characters, according to the back, from 1st to 15th level. Now, for those of you who are new, the storyline with the Elemental Evil is basically an updated version of the Temple of Elemental Evil adventure that came out in 1985 for 1st edition AD&D. I haven't actually, as much as I hate to admit it, I haven't actually sat down and read this yet. I know the basics of it with the 4 Elemental Evil cults, worshipping the Princes of Elemental Evil, but one of these days I actually plan to sit down and read the full thing. In the 2000s, for 3.0, in the early 2000s, they released the Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, which was sort of an update or a sequel to the original one, so it kind of took place afterwards. There's been books and video games about it, so the Elemental Evil storyline is one that's been a big part of D&D's history since way back in the day. This version here is an updated take on it, and it's actually set by default in the Forgotten Realms setting. So it's different where the original one was set in the world of Greyhawk, for example. The basic premise was the Temple of Elemental Evil in this adventure was created by some renegade drow who wanted to get away from the worship of Lolth and were venerating these elemental forces. They were found, discovered, or wiped out, and then sometime after that, a clan of dwarves basically discovered the temple, and they were wiped out subsequently after that by a band of orcs, and the Temple of Elemental Evil basically went abandoned for quite some time until it was discovered by once again another renegade drow who created 4 mythical weapons, each representing one of the 4 elements, and then simply left it there for the chosen of the elemental evil, or the princes of elemental evil, to lure their chosen ones to in order to start their cult. So these chosen individuals, they kind of found their way to this temple, grabbed the weapon that corresponded with the elemental prince that was kind of summoning them, and they began cults from there. It looks like an interesting storyline. I haven't really gotten a chance to read too much of it. I just picked it up yesterday, and I've only had a chance to flip through it because I had my regular game night the same night, so I had to prepare for that. At a glance, and again, this is just a first impressions video. I'm going to do a full review once I've had a chance to sit down and read it in full detail. But for now, I just want to get my initial thoughts off. It looks like it's going to be a little less linear than the Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign, or the Tyranny of Dragons campaign, I should say, which was one of the big complaints that I kind of saw offline or online, was that it was this, basic, point A to point B campaign, stuff like that. Now, I'm running Horde of the Dragon Queen as we speak and having a lot of fun with it. I'm not really running it exactly as written, but very, very closely too, but I'm having fun with it. I think my group's having fun with it, and it seems like a pretty cool campaign. But I do see where some people were coming from when they said it was definitely linear. With this one here, you're basically, trying to investigate the cults, but there's no set order in which you have to investigate the cults. It's not like you have to start with the cult of air and then move on to earth, water and then fire or anything like that. There's a recommended progression based off the challenges, but it's not really set in stone. No pun intended. So I kind of like that aspect of it. It's something that I'm looking forward to running down the road. One of the issues that I have with it, I think, is the fact that it says it's from levels 1 through 15, if you look on the back. So, Dungeons & Dragons Adventure for characters levels 1 through 15. The adventure properly starts at 3rd level. Now, Chapter 6, which I'm going to talk about in a little more detail here in a moment, has some short adventures basically listed in it, and it has the adventures for levels 1 and 2 moving into level 3. The only thing I don't like about that is, if you intend for the players, at first level to go through those adventures, why not have it at the beginning? I know that, I guess they're trying to accommodate for the fact that more veteran groups aren't really going to want to start at first level, but the amount of time it takes you to gain 3rd level isn't very long in 5th edition. I mean, in the previous editions, you have to earn 1,000 experience points to reach 2nd level. In 5th edition, you reach 3rd level by 900 experience. So there's not really a strong need for them to have started at third instead of first. And, if especially where they say that there's some stuff for first and second level characters, kind of put that at the beginning and go from there. But other than that, I don't really have any other complaints. It would have been nice, again, to have some pull-out maps. I mean, the original adventure certainly did, and it used to be a staple of these pre-made adventures that they had some maps that you could kind of pull out, if it was a little booklet or some poster maps or something. It would have been nice to have had those for the DM's reference, so he's not constantly going into the book to get a layout for a particular area. But it's a minor complaint. It's one I'm going to continue to bring up just because it's something that kind of bothers me, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not something where I would, want to take this back because it didn't have it, for example. Another issue that I do want to discuss would be the price. I don't know how well it's going to show up just because of the glare, but it is $49.95 US and $58 Canadian. Now, again, I'm Canadian, so this book would have cost me well over $60. Now, it's got a page count of about 255, 256, so that's not terrible. And you're definitely going to get a lot of use out of it because you're running it as a campaign. So, for me, it's worth it because I'm probably going to get a year's worth of play out of it, if not more, depending on how frequently I run. So from that perspective, it's definitely worth the price. If you're just looking to buy it because it's a new book, it's kind of a high price if you don't really intend to use it. Now, one of the things that I really do like about it is the Chapter 6, which is essentially some short adventures or side treks. The reason I really like that is I'm currently, like I said, running my Horde of the Dragon Queen, or Tyranny of Dragons campaign. I don't know why I keep calling it Horde of the Dragon Queen. I guess it's because of the book I'm on. But I'm currently running that for an online group. I've had quite a few people interested in joining, but they just can't commit to a regular, once every 2-week game. I run on Saturdays. It's kind of hard for people to get that time off. A lot of people work on weekends and stuff like that, so it's difficult for them to commit. So one of the things that I want to do for those people is run some one-offs, which, would just be a single evening, maybe 2 sessions at most, and they would be side stories that were set in the same world, in the same campaign, and they had, their events that could influence the main story, but they weren't so strongly interconnected that, if I didn't run them, then there would be something missing, for example. I actually, last weekend, I was out of town and got to game with some members of my old group, and I just kind of ran one of those one-shots off the top of my head, and it was a great time. So it's something that I want to do. Now, with the adventures in Chapter 6, they're kind of side treks, and they're not necessarily something that they have to run them. I think what I would do is keep them for the one-shots and just kind of expand on them and make them a little bit bigger so I could run them for other groups who couldn't make the regular campaign. So I find that incredibly useful for that. There's some pre-built-in ideas of what I can do to sort of accommodate people who aren't able to join the regular game. So I really like that. The artwork, of course, in the book is absolutely fantastic, as has been the case, I think, for pretty much all of 5th edition. Just see if I can get some examples. It's kind of hard to hold it up here while I'm recording, but there's some really nice artwork. The maps are nicely detailed. Most of the maps that I've seen so far, the rooms don't look like oddly laid out, unlike some of the other previously built campaigns. Not so much the Tyranny of Dragons, but I ran a pre-made campaign way back in 3rd edition 3.5 called Shackled City, which was actually in the dungeon magazines. And it was a great campaign, but the maps were very intricate and very visually pleasing to look at. But they had rooms that were at angles, they were at odd shapes, and if you were trying to get somebody to map them, it was basically a nightmare. So from just a quick flip through, it looks like a lot of the maps in this are more or less square rooms, which I kind of like, so it'd be easier to kind of explain to people if they're mapping, especially when you're doing an online game, so it's not like you can just have a map there that they can all look at. Another great feature of this is, and I'm just going to see if I can get to it here now. Again, it's just some really fantastic art. Where this does take place mainly in the Forgotten Realms, it does accommodate the fact that people may not want to run a Forgotten Realms campaign. So what it gives them, once I can get to it, here we go. So once one of the things that they do have is an appendix for adapting the campaign for other settings. So it starts off with Dark Sun, gives some great suggestions for that. What different factions could be from converting from the Forgotten Realms version to the Dark Sun setting. It has Dragonlance, which is a little more complex because you have to look at the ages that it's set in and stuff like that. But it goes through all that information for that as well, and of course Greyhawk, which is the original setting that it was part of, as well as Eberron. So if you're looking to run an Eberron campaign, or if you like the Eberron setting and you want to run a campaign in it, you can kind of use this for that. It's relatively simple, just a few changes you have to make, but it's really cool that they would actually accommodate that. They also have an afterword, just a short little blurb written by Christopher Perkins, which is always really cool. I enjoy watching Chris DM games, for like Acquisitions Incorporated and stuff like that. So, a big fan of his. It's cool that he wrote some stuff for the, an afterword for the book, but it also has a little section here with just a bunch of concept art, which I actually really like. They're, visual aids that you could definitely show your players. And it's just a nice little detail that I think was kind of missing from the Dragon Queen one. But, so like I said, it's a really nice addition. Now, another thing that I do want to talk about with this, there is a player's guide. It's a free PDF, and it was something that a friend and I, before this came out, before the PDF was announced, we were kind of discussing, what they were going to do, because I knew they were going to introduce new races and player information in this book. I just didn't know exactly what it was going to be, and, one of the things that my friend had mentioned, and I definitely agree, is he didn't like the idea that there's going to be a lot of player-centered information in the book, just because it then encourages players to go out and buy the entire campaign just to get that little section on player characters. Now, then shortly after, we had that conversation, the free PDF came out. So I'm going to include a link to where you can find it on the Wizards website. You'll probably have to click through a few prompts to get to it, but it's a free download, definitely worth it. It's a 25-page handout. It has 4 different races in it, as well as a whole host of spells. Now, the races are the Aarakocra, which I'm hoping I'm saying correctly, because I always used to call them the Akarokas, which I know was definitely wrong. The Deep Gnomes, the Goliath race, as well as the Genasi. Now, everybody for people who know the Genasi are an elemental race to begin with, so they have different variations for fire, earth, water, and wind. Or air, I guess. So, the Aarakocra, Deep Gnome, and Goliath only appear in the free PDF. They're not actually a part of this book. So if you want those races, the only way to get it is to download the PDF, which is nice because there's a little bit of exclusive content for people who do download it. If you're a DM and you own the book and you want, you don't want to print off the full thing, you don't have to. The Genasi race and all of the spells that are in the player's guide are in this book. So all you'd really have to do is print off the first few pages with the races that don't appear in this book. I think that's a really great idea. I'm hoping that more products like this, if they release more campaigns, that they do that sort of thing. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea, and it's free, which is even better. So, they could have charged, $1, $2, or, whatever they wanted for it. I'm glad they made it free. It's still free. And like I said, I'm going to include the link. Definitely go download it. It's just fantastic. I mean, even if it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, the fact that it doesn't cost you anything, there's no reason not to get it. But it is pretty cool, especially where it does have a little bit of exclusive content. Other than that, that's really my first impressions overall. One last thing I will say, it's not really a knock on the adventure or anything, but my copy of the book, the pages at the back really looks like they were stuck together with some of the adhesive that went into the binding. And I was able to get them apart, although it's still difficult to separate the pages at the bottom. And actually, as you can see, they still kind of like stick together a little bit. Some of the pages, the entire length of the bottom was completely sealed to the next page. It took me probably a good 5 minutes or so to separate the pages because I wanted to be very careful. Some of them I was really worried about having the pages rip if I went too quickly. I can't say anybody else's is going to be like that, obviously, but that's something that I encountered, so I was a little worried about that. If you do get a copy and the back pages do seem to be stuck together, my recommendation is just go from the top, kind of slide your hand down, and take your time separating them. The pages aren't that thick, so it's possible that if they're stuck together good enough, you could end up tearing them, and you don't want to do that for a brand new book that you spent, $50, $60 on. So again, this is just a first impressions. I do plan on doing a full review. It'll give me a chance to read the original so I can kind of compare the two, which is nice. I'm glad to have an excuse to do that now. I do plan on having a full review up hopefully in the next week or two. I want to actually be able to take time to thoroughly read everything and formulate my thoughts before I put the video out. But I also want it to be out in a point in time in which the book is newly out, not long enough that it's almost irrelevant, and that's been, the internet's been inundated with other reviews. But I like it so far. I think it's a really cool adventure. I'm looking forward to run it once I wrap up my Tyranny of Dragons campaign, which is going to be a ways down the road. But I do definitely plan on running this. I like the fact that it's a little more open-ended in terms of how you want to progress through it. And I like those side trek adventures because, like I said, I plan on expanding it for people who aren't able to join the regular game so I can do a few one-offs for other players. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to say about it at this point. If you get a chance, check it out, and again, just wait for the full review. I'm hoping to have it up by next weekend, or, the week after at the very latest, so I'm going to definitely take some time to sit down and read them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you enjoyed the adventure, and I guess, keep gaming. Thank you very much for watching, YouTube.